they have to, if they want trade distribution, be willing for this feedback, be willing for the work, be willing to say, hey, you know what? All of sales, all of marketing, all of editorial is looking at this, and the title and the cover really have to have this element in order for it to work in the market.
Hello and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. I'm your host, Isolde Trachtenberg. On the show, I interview peak performing innovators in the creative, social impact, and earth conservation spaces who are working to change the world. This episode is brought to you by Brain FM. Brain FM combines the best of music and neuroscience to help you relax, focus, meditate, and even sleep. I love it and have been using it to write, create, and do some of my deepest work. Because you're a listener of the show, you can get a free trial. Head over to brain.fm/innovative mindset to check it out. If you decide to subscribe, you can get 20% off with the coupon code Innovative Mindset, all one word. And now, let's get to the show. Hey there, and welcome to the Innovative Mindset Podcast. My name is Isolde Trachtenberg. I am super happy that you're here. I'm thrilled and honored and so happy to welcome this week's guest. She and I have just been chatting before we started recording, and I know this is going to be a super fun conversation. And you know what, Angela? I didn't ask you exactly how to say your last name, so I'm just going to try it. Angela Engel is an entrepreneur and book publisher expert with over 20 years of experience in the publishing industry. After working for 20 years in the publishing industry and with major publishing companies, including Chronicle Books, 10 Speed Press, Cameron & Company, Dwell Studio, and Moleskine, Angela is on a mission to disrupt the publishing industry by giving budding authors more agency and authority in the publishing process. And you know how close that is to my heart, with 6 books to my name and 3 more in the pipeline. As founder of the Collective Book Studio, she provides authors the support they need to get a book out into the world. She's the founder and CEO of the Collective Book Studio, and it's a partnership publisher working to pair authors' vision with quality book production in the areas of lifestyle, gift, and children's books. Angela, I am so glad that you are here. Welcome.
Thank you. And you pronounced my name perfectly.
Oh, yay. I was a little concerned, and I was like, I normally ask, and completely forgot, because I was so excited to be talking to you, and we were having such a great conversation that everything went out of my head. So first of all, wow that you're doing this. We were just talking about the fact that there are authors, so many authors like me, the DIY people who are self-publishing, who've been crying for what you are offering. You're building a name for yourself and the studio and the Collective Book Studio in publishing, and you're doing it in a way that's really, in many ways, disrupting the industry yet again. I would love if you would talk a little bit about what you are trying to do. What is the mission of the Collective Book Studio?
That's a big question.
I know.
Mission. But I have, as you said, I have a career of over 20 years in the space. When I was a young thing right out of college, a comparative lit and creative writer, I loved books. I mean, who doesn't, right?
Right.
Especially in the journalism field, in the creative writing field, in the English major, all of our stuff. And our dream is to work in publishing. And I got my dream. I got really lucky. I was, 1 or 2 when I graduated, and I drove down to San Francisco and I applied for this job at Publishers Group West, which is now bought by Ingram. We all know who Ingram is. It's a huge mega wholesaler. And obviously self-publishing knows a lot about Ingram.
Oh yeah.
And I got my first job there. And in that was like this champion of independent presses and small presses. And I actually had a great boss. Her name was Trig McLeod, and she came from Broadway Books in New York. She had been Cindy Crawford's publicist. And I think she saw in me, honestly, this young thing, that I could do what I wanted to do. But she sort of was like, I'm going to sort of mentor you and let you ride the wave. And I got to ride 2 campaigns with her. One was The 4 Agreements, which was, as we all know, a New York Times bestseller and continues to be an incredible book.
Sure.
And then the other one was when 9/11 hit, was Noam Chomsky's book by 7 Stories. And watching her champion these small independent presses become New York Times bestsellers was just magical, right? Because because you brought in your editorial, your publisher, the writer, like all of, and then distribution and all the ways to make this successful and honestly compete with the big 5 publishing houses. And then at that same time, there's something called Amazon.
Oh, yes.
And they were really just a book retailer, right? Like it was like Amazon and Walden Pond in the malls, right? Like where did you go buy books, right? Barnes and Noble was like the big thing, Borders, and there was like some Walden Ponds, and there was Amazon that was like starting to be a book retailer.
Right.
And at that same time, it was also like, maybe Urban Outfitters or Anthropologie or Papyrus should start selling books. And I started just this sort of career path with, even in the publishing space, carving out for myself, becoming a specialist in how do we sell books outside of the book trade, right?
Wow.
And partly how you do that is packaging, is the way the book looks. Because you have to remember, you're writing for someone else. Right? In many ways, you have to understand your audience and the buyer. Sometimes the person who buys the book is completely different than your audience. And so understanding that package is really key. So my mission was, let's jump ahead over almost 3 years ago, when I had been back, my career was interesting partly because, I'm a mom of 3 girls, and, I'm pregnant with my 3rd baby, and I'm at a big trade show, and I'm like, God, I can't keep like pumping like this. And I got 2 kids at home. So, I quit and I started consulting. And in this time of consulting, there was this boom of self-publishing. And I understood why people were going that route. But I saw also an issue when it came to understanding the full reason traditional publishing is so sacred. One being the craft of the book, the typography, the editorial, everything, the illustrations, and then also the distribution piece. So I wanted to find a company that could offer something completely different than Amazon can ever offer, which is, people ask me this all the time. Do I have to sign an NDA? I'm like, there's no NDA to sign. It's people. Like how you can't really recreate Angela or Dean Burrell or Elizabeth Sahi, like any of my staff. So you get to work with people who have been experts in this field for decades. Yeah. So that's sort of the mission, is how to let people, I would welcome agent network, and we use agents for illustrators. It's not necessary, right, these days. And so how can we make sure that people are having access to publishing and not having to wait 3 to 4 years to get on a list or develop a huge profile and, Instagram following and all the other hurdles that are existing now. My model is different, right? And people do and have to invest in their work. Our royalties are also much higher. So it's just a give and take, why I call it partnership publishing.
I'm taking all of that in for a second. That was a lot. I asked a big question. You gave a big answer. So here's the thing. I love the notion of partnership publishing, and I hear what the Collective Book Studio brings to the table. How much pushback do you get from the more traditional ways of publishing, like the Big 5? What kind of reception are you getting from the more traditional spaces?
Oh, I have been just like cheered on. My colleagues are awesome. I mean, we just signed Fran Hauser, incredible woman. And she had a New York Times bestseller, Myth of the Nice Girl. It was just my big win this week was there was an article in Publishers Weekly in our trade magazine, in the print and digital, that the Collective Book Studio is trying a new approach. And we were the keynote breakfast speaker, Pamela and Rocco, for Kaliba, which is an institution, right? It's the California Alliance of Booksellers. We were the keynote at their breakfast, her and Deepika Chopra. And why? Is because I'm saying to the world, hey, I'm just saying, let's figure out how Amazon cannot control the distribution piece. Because when you're self-publishing, you're really kind of also, although you own your IP and you have all this control, you're actually giving many of it over to Amazon, right?
Sure.
If you think about it, because there's definitely ways bookstores can sell you when you go through Ingram and Ingram Spark. That said, you don't have a massive team behind you selling your book into I mean, you're in Brooklyn. So, okay, books are magic. Amazing, right? The Strand, amazing. Green Apple. So I'm such a huge champion. I think this goes back to my activism, right? We kind of talked about this. I am such an activist that I'm like, I am not going to leave my small booksellers behind, right? Like, I personally only buy my books on bookshop.org. That's my person. Now, I can't say we can't to say that to everybody, but for me, I believe that the small acts we choose to do change the trajectory of our lives, because we're teaching our community, we're teaching our kids. So for me, I just decided, oh, what is my small act? I sometimes can't run into every small little bookstore. I'm busy with my 3 kids, but I can click a button and buy a book on bookshop.org.
I love that so much. That makes me so I know, seriously, it's like, yay, good for you. And I think that notion of small acts adding up to big changes is so, it's key in many ways, in the way so many authors have to do things. And it seems like it's key to the way the Collective Book Studio is doing it. And you're disrupting. You're a disruptor because you're providing more pathways for authors to get published. And yet, like, as a self-published author myself, one of the things that has happened when I've tried to do it is stores and first of all, getting into libraries is very challenging. The ALA is like, yeah, I don't think so. But at the same time, they often don't want to talk to you unless you have some sort of a company behind you. How does the Collective Book Studio maneuver in that space? Like, because you have distribution, the smaller stores out there, more independent booksellers, are willing to talk to you? Or is there some other pathway that you can follow that just a single person might not be able to?
No, we have full distribution. You have to. So we partnered with Independent Publishers Group out of Chicago. They also own Chicago Review Press and Triumph Books, two great companies. I personally am a huge fan of Chicago Review Press. And we started as a packager. I'm going to back up. Like, the Collective Book Studio, what is a packager? Is we will create books and then we will sell them to other publishing houses lists that have distribution. It's very common in the industry. Or we'll do proprietary work. Like, we're doing these beautiful, big custom board books for Costco. So this is very common, actually. Like, a lot of publishers, 20 to +% of their list is buy-ins or pack from packagers. We also create creative content. We have a whole series called The Secrets Thoughts Of, and it's just us writing it. And it's like in the cats and dogs. It's really cool. So what I said in this article at PW is that we act actually very similar to a traditional house. So when I connected with Joe Matthews, I'm already saying, hey, we are traditional publishing. We have content to fuel our trade list that you're going to get revenue on. And in addition, I'm going to bring incredible clients with me that we vet, that we have, that they have a lot of say, but ultimately they're coming to us. So, like, it's not like, okay, I want this cover and it's this crazy cover with a bunch of purple volcanoes all over it. And we all, you know what I'm saying? And
Right.
like, we're like, okay, that will never work. So they come to us with knowing it's in my contract that, like, ultimately they have to, if they want trade distribution, be willing for this feedback, be willing for the work, be willing to say, hey, you know what? All of sales, all of marketing, all of editorial is looking at this, and the title and the cover really have to have this element in order for it to work in the market. And all my clients are grateful for that. They understand that from the start. That's why I also say our clients choose us as much as we choose them, because again, in a partnership, I think we talked about this before the podcast, you're kind of all about creative collaboration,
Sure.
which I really love that you said that, because that is sort of my mission, is that in a partnership publishing house, we have to agree and go together towards that end product. And I think that there are some people who have been frustrated in the traditional space because they feel like, oh my God, I didn't even have any say. And then there's people in the self-publishing space, like you say, you can't get into libraries, where if you come through us, like I'm doing a TLA, a Texas Library Association, like big, huge giveaway box, because I can because I have major distribution. And they have booth space at those shows, don't forget.
Right.
They have and I pay into that. So my company is listed in trade shows too. So librarians know that they can easily buy us, and that we're a publishing house, a company.
And it's interesting because what I kept thinking to myself as I was listening to you talk was, you're vetted. Like, they know that you will give them quality books to put in their libraries, or to, when you distribute them, or all of that. That's something that a lot of sort of self-published authors don't have. They don't have that space of, someone already knows me, unless you're, I don't know, Scott Siegler or something, before he signed with whoever it is he signed with. When he was putting his stuff out, people knew that his books were good and that they wanted them. Whereas for most authors, it doesn't seem like it's like that. So as I keep coming back to this word disruptor, and you are changing the industry because of this partnership model, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that actually means to you. What does being a disruptor mean? And what are you disrupting exactly?
Yeah. I mean, I think I'm going to go back to Fran Hauser, because she said it the best, way better to Publishers Weekly this week, right? Then they quoted her, which is that sometimes it makes sense to go with traditional publishers who takes the financial risk. And sometimes partnership publishing makes sense, especially when it's time sensitive. I'm open to both models. And what does that mean to me when she said that, and I read that, and what that means to me is that I think we need to be open to both models, because there's something called owning your IP, right? That people are sort of upset about in this traditional space, where, hey, if I go with a traditional publisher and I own all this IP and I got to sign over my rights, but I want to create, characters for Netflix or whatever else your dream is to do with it. My model is disrupting the space, because basically I'm licensing in some way for only a certain amount of years their IP. So this is how we work. We create a creative fee, and sometimes people don't want trade, right? And it's just packaging. So we have definitely projects that are on our list that we just make books for companies, and they get a beautiful book and we're done. Then there are about 60% of our clients who really would like to be seen in the Strand and at the Library Association. And so they sign a distribution deal with the Collective Book Studio as part of our imprint, but I don't own their IP. I don't own that for life. That is that's the disrupting piece, right? Is that I'm actually saying to publishing houses, why are we so scared of owning this for a lifetime? Because Amazon has disrupted our industry. Let's be real. People are going there, they want faster, and they don't want to have their IP owned. So let's listen to what they're asking for. This is it's almost like we talk about movements. Look, I think enough people have spoken to say, I want to have a book. I really want to have a book, and no one's listening to that. So I'm going to just do it on my own. And Amazon saw that need. And now they have not only been able to do it successfully, there are several, if not hundreds, of companies that are hybrid services that offer certain kinds of editorial and great ways to make a really good book, which is important. And you can get an editor and you can get a graphic designer through them, but they still don't have the distribution piece, right? And so they're able to sort of utilize Amazon's ability for sales and still create some quality production in some way, but they still don't have the ability, those services, because ultimately they, hand it over to you and you're left, right, as an author to do it all, to still do all the marketing, to do still all the PR, and ultimately to, print on demand or to do some offset. You're still left with that piece. And I sort of felt like, well, if I created an imprint and a trade imprint that that was truly vetted, I could get the distribution, because then librarians, booksellers, they trust what's on our list, right? They know it's been vetted through what I started this podcast with, really seasoned professionals for decades who come from, don't forget, places like Random House, HarperCollins, Chronicle Books. I mean, that's where my staff comes from.
I keep having to take a second and take all of that in. Yeah. We were chatting about earlier how this is just like having a cup of coffee together. So imagine that I'm taking a sip of my soy latte right now. I love that you're talking about the aspect of it that you're giving this opportunity to people to not be holding the entire bag, because there's this notion of playing to your strengths. My strengths, perhaps, are the writing. They may not be the marketing and the PR and all this other stuff. And I feel like for so many professions, we all have to wear a cajillion hats. I have to be my accountant. I have to be my marketing person, my PR person, my this, my that, my the other. And sometimes I don't want to. Sometimes I can't. And I'm talking about the general I here. So you're offering this, and you started it with the hope that you could, right? That I think I can, that I'm going to. Partially because you have these seasoned professionals, but something in you seems like you're just like the eternal optimist, like, I'm going to be able to make this happen and let's go. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, how does as the CEO of this company, how does your state of mind affect the process, affect your collaborations with the people on your staff, and also your collaborations with the authors that you take on?
Oh, I love this question. I mean, mindset is everything. It's everything. What a great question. I mean, look, entrepreneurship is hard. When you ask me, how do my colleagues feel in my traditional space? I'm going to go back when I first started the company, because now, of course, they're applauding. Of course, I'm getting this, like, and even in the very beginning, I had really, I in confidence, I called a friend of mine who was high up at Random House, and I called a friend at Simon & Schuster, and I called a friend at Chronicle, and all of them were really, really supportive, but they were also like, Angela, we could not offer you distribution. Like, you got to go get like $1 million in backlist sales. So I had to say, okay, it's not like I snapped my fingers and I was like, because when I first thought, okay, I'm going to snap my fingers and it's going to be pretty easy to get distribution with Ingram. No. And I'm an insider, right? It was not easy. There were a lot of no's. There were a lot of, like, honestly, I'm going to say this, but it's really true. And I'm going to say it because I'm a woman in my 40s who's climbed really high into my career before I was even 30. And there are a lot, especially in sales, old boys clubs. There just are in the industry. And it felt like I constantly was like, oh, that's nice, but you're kind of young or you're kind of naive. And and then I'm in my 40s, right? And I'm like, wait a second, I have spent 20 years of my career and you're still treating me this way? I'm like, oh God, no. So you know what I did? I just said, I'm just not gonna listen anymore. I'm going to internally, I actually have said this on so many times to myself, to my friends, on other podcasts, I am going to just have this mantra: change starts with you. And if I have this mantra for myself every morning or when I'm feeling stuck, and I think change starts with you, I can do anything. And so when you ask how I lead my team, is I lead my team with that idea that like, okay, you're feeling frustrated, or okay, a client is not doing right, or okay, this is not going on schedule. What can we change? What is it about you? What is it that we need to do? What is it that I need to do to move this forward on this project? And I think my team and my clients would say, the one thing is, even when I'm stuck, I use that as an optimism piece, because I know that in my own 20 plus years, there has been people who have not believed in me. And I just have to let that go. You know, like you just, and when you do, you surround yourself. Like, look, I'm here today on your podcast because I surround myself with people who do believe in this power of lifting others up.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I'm going to take it in for a second. No, because we were talking a little bit earlier about my mantra, which is creativity, compassion, and collaboration. And that, it seems like I can almost go, well, Angela, that seems like it's kind of your mantra too, that this notion that you're working in this very creative field. And you also have that analytical side too that has to keep sort of the all of the bowling pins in a row, if you will. But compassion is another word that I'm hearing from you. Compassion for the authors, compassion for the process, compassion for your people on your staff. That it's very sort of purpose driven, but also heart centered, if you see what I mean. And I'm just wondering a little bit about what that means to you, what leading from that space means to you, both if you don't mind sharing, both in the business world and also in your personal life, because in many ways as the CEO you sort of have to figure all of that out. How are you going to divide the 3 girls that you have, that you're a mom to, your relationships, all of that, and how do you align that with the business that you're responsible for running?
You asked some really good questions. While you were talking, I'm thinking of this woman. Her name is Susan Reich, and she was president of like Avalon, which was this really cool publishing house. They had like tons of imprints, one being Seal Press, which was this great imprint. She ended up becoming president of, I believe, Publishers Group West, which is part of Ingram. And this is my biggest tip to any person: find the really people who've all done it before you, who've been able to, especially I think women, I needed to find a woman in my life who had already climbed such a ladder and had been in boardrooms and was such a boys club that I could like sit down with. So when I first started this business, and they have to be in your industry. So she was in my industry. She like understood my industry. And I asked her to coffee. I hadn't talked to her for years. And she took my coffee, right? And I was like, it's so excited. Like I'm 40 plus, and I felt like I was 22 again, right? And she met me for coffee 3 years ago. And she said to me, I love your idea. I think this is going to work. And it was like that moment for me. And I actually re-emailed Susan, like about once I got once I got Fran Hauser, and I told her, and we're going to we haven't seen each other with the vaccines all now rolling out. Like once everyone's fully vaccinated, we'll make a time to go get coffee again. But why I said this is you're asking me, like, remind me what my question is. I got on a little tangent, but I know that I'm stringing it together.
Do you want me to remind you?
Yes.
Okay. So basically it's how do you align the compassionate, heart-centered, purpose-driven part of who you are with business and also your personal world, and how you figure all of that out.
Okay. So this is my connection here. So Susan going out for that coffee, right? It's in some way taking her time. I'm not paying her, whatever. she's showing compassion. She's like, I remember this young 22-year-old sitting at the Xerox machine, working hard for me, right? Making sure my company succeeded, like really caring about my books. And she now took that moment and had compassion when I said, I really need some advice, right? And
Mm.
so I think that those things, I lead with those things because I recognize that those things about the human spirit, the human life, like what when we show compassion to another human, right? When Susan shows compassion to me, I then it's almost like I'm a candle and it gets lit,
Mm.
my fuel, and then I have time to just give it to somebody else. The issue is when we need to keep passing that on to people. It's almost
Mm-hmm.
like, how I do it is I have my little group of people, and when I'm feeling a little like, ooh, my flame's out, it's not as high as I need it to be, I go to the people that I know I need to refuel me so that I can refuel both my staff, my clients, my business. And then in return, that does creep into my home life, right? Like I am not so good at R&R, to be honest, and
Mm.
either is my husband. He's a small business owner himself. He actually is a controller, accountant for restaurants. So it's intense, I bet, for my girls to have two small business owners in the time of
Mm.
COVID. But my girls are like, they're the biggest champions of me. Like my girls, for example, when my oldest, who now is about to turn 13, she knows her mom from 14 weeks old. I mean, she doesn't remember, but she remembers if when, as she got older, that I was always traveling. I was on the road every other month.
Mm.
Twice a month, every other week.
Wow.
And I was pumping. I mean, of course I was. I was selling to Costco. I was selling to Target. I was selling to Bye Bye Baby. I was selling to Babies R Us at Toys R Us when that account existed. And so mom wasn't there in that same physical way. So when I was quit with my kind of corporate lifestyle, she was already like 8 or 9 years old, right? And
Mm.
I'm having a baby. My youngest and my oldest are 8 years apart. And there was a moment I had a meltdown. This is about compassion. And I just lost it. We were in the car and I had a crying baby and I have a 9-year-old and I have a toddler. And they want stuff. They wanted to stop at the Gap or something annoying. And I said, I turn around and the baby's crying. I probably have to nurse and my boobs are probably huge. And I didn't have, for the first time in my life, I didn't have this like big job to like, or a nanny to pick them up or something. And I
Mm.
said, I turn around and I'm like, your dad makes all the money. Why don't you go ask him to take you? And my oldest looks at me and she's like 9 years old. And she's like, Mom, you can make money too.
Oh.
Yeah. And that moment, that compassion, that realization that like, oh my God, I've beaten myself up. I've had mom guilt that I haven't, wasn't able to go to her kindergarten, this or that. My daughter actually sees me so differently that's what motivated me to found the Collective Book Studio. That's what motivates me every day. That kind of fuel that she was like, Mom, you're a badass.
Oh, that's amazing. I
Yeah.
love that. And it's so telling that sometimes we just can't see ourselves as well as the people who love us can see us. There's a real powerful lesson
Yes.
right there. Wow. Incredible. Incredible. Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing that you were aware enough to take the lesson from that. There are people out there probably would have gone, yeah, whatever, but you actually stopped and you actually took it in, and that's amazing. Good for you. Wow.
Oh, thank you. You're the first who actually said it that way. I appreciate that. I really do, because I did take it in. And I guess that's a tip if people are listening. Like, take those small moments in, because you know what I realized? My anger or what I said to my children, that's not okay. Like, that wasn't about my husband. Like, a partnership, just like in my business, but in my marriage and in my relationship, which we've been together 15 years, almost 16, it is a give and take, right?
Mm.
Like there are moments that we're gotta share in the work. And that's really what my daughter, who I'm she I gotta tell you, these 13-year-olds, she's gonna be in eighth grade next year, they're about when they talk, I don't know. I just want to say, like, the way that they're intelligent about gender is just incredible. And I think in that moment, my daughter was really able to say, "Whoa, mom, check yourself." And she was only like 9 years old.
And she said it in the way a 9-year-old would, right? She right to the point.
Yes.
I love that. I'm so glad that you're raising such aware kids. Good for you. Uh, no, because honestly, I spent 20 years working. I worked at NASA for over 20 years, and I was teaching. I was traveling and teaching kids how to save the planet. That was my job. It was awesome, and you see 7-year-olds teaching college professors because the college professors think they know everything, but the 7-year-old is the one who actually does. It's really quite it's quite something. They were able to do it. They were able to teach them these valuable lessons. And that brings me to a question that I would love to chat with you about. This notion of teaching others, of showing compassion, and also just being giving back, I guess. What is your thought on that? Because I know that your business and you personally, you're a philanthropist, right? So what role does giving back, does philanthropy play in your business model and also for you as the CEO of that business?
Yeah. Well, I think that if we wait around always to say, okay, who else is going to do this, or I don't like it this way, or we have that kind of mindset, nothing will change, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so I in the start of the pandemic, about now a little over a year ago, one of my closest friends was an ER ICU doc here in Oakland, and we all know there wasn't enough PP there was not enough medical face shields for our frontline workers. And instead of me sort of thinking about, well, gosh, what am I going to do? What can I do? I'm a publisher house. I thought, you know what? I'm going to link up with one of my friends who's a small business owner herself, who's out of work, a fabricator. And because we're a business, we're going to be able to wire money over to DuPont and make medical face shields. And people would be like, what is a publishing house? Why is she doing this? Right.
Mm.
So my why is that my best friend was working nonstop in the ICU ER. My home is very, very close to Highland Hospital, which is it's from the county hospital. It's a public hospital, which serves a lot of low income and brown and black people and people of color and indigenous color and low income. And it's literally down the street from me. There's and I'm an Oakland business. And so I felt it was my duty, my right, even though I might manufacture books as a community activist, paying taxes and being part of Oakland and this hospital. And my friend wasn't at that hospital, was at a different one. But then I really sort of networked myself to San Francisco labor and said, hey, what do we need? And the clinics around here, from Santa Clara County low-income clinics and to the Navajo Nation, because it grew, right? We're not just our nuclear small business and our little area. You start small in your community. I guess that's my biggest advice. If you don't know where to start in your community and it will grow. Like all of a sudden I was getting pinged by friends who had connections to the Navajo Nation. And if you allow yourself to say, okay, I'm going to give myself this little time to be an activist in this particular space, and you open yourself up and like we're saying, we collaborate with other people you can network with. I ended up giving money over to a nonprofit to really maintain all of it because I have to go back to my real business, right? But my work is not over in that moment. that's one side. So what's my next project? Like I'm working now on a book where we did a big I Fund Women campaign, and our goal is to distribute and sell thousands and thousands and thousands of copies of this little tiny book, which is called Eat Cake for Breakfast, which who doesn't want to eat cake for breakfast? And it's written by this incredible entrepreneur and philanthropist, Viola Suntanto, and she wants to be able to give back to UCSF Oakland Children's Hospital. And we connected during the pandemic. We went on a walk, and her daughter had a rare bone condition, and she needed to get treatment at UCSF, and she wanted to be able to give back to this hospital. And so I said, well, I'm already manufacturing books. I already have staff. I already have people and the mass distribution. If you want to run an I Fund Women campaign so that we have money to manufacture this book, I'm happy to provide, my marketing team or PR team and operational team to get this book into the world. And that's what I also would say. If you are a small business and you want to give back, sometimes you are able to just because you have a certain capability in manufacturing. If you think about all the places where they made masks to donate or other things, I just think it's finding those things. I also know that giving back, it can be so easy. What did I say? I just buy my books now from bookshop.org. They've raised over $12 million to independent bookstores across the nation. Like that's also activism. If you just think about what your business or who you are can do and give back. I mean, for me, when Black Lives Matter really was at the forefront of everybody, it was my duty for my kids to go out there into the streets, to make signs, to see it, but it was also not enough. Like we ended up sending face shields to Minneapolis to service, for example, Children's Minnesota Hospital to help people during the riots. Like, I just think, what is my take back? Like, I think that if my company, there's only there's money, but you can never, ever buy time, and you can never buy humans. And like, I guess that's part of my philosophy in life. Like you could have all the money in the world, but that does not give you back your people and your time. And that's what I want to see when I'm old and gray and maybe sitting on a beach, is like what I've been able to reflect, who I've touched. I mean, that means the world to me. That's my personal thing. So my company, I mean, I do books, I do stories. Like I'm grateful every day what I do, because I do think words change lives. They create movements.
For sure they do. And I'm, on behalf of authors everywhere, I'm so grateful that you are doing what you're doing. It's amazing. So I
got really passionate there.
I know. I love it. I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
What did I just talk about?
No, this is great. I think it's so important. No, because we are not just what we do for a living, right?
Yes,
and if you can, to me, the most successful person is the person who does what they love. And then there's a wonderful quote by in the book Gibbon's Decline and Fall by Sherry Tepper. And it's my favorite quote. Like, it's what I live by, and it's a little bit of dialogue, but I have to tell it to you in case you've never read the book. It's about a woman who has since died, but she started a movement, and somebody's talking about what she used to say, and this is the quote: "Find your sun-warmed stone," she used to say to us. "Go there, build your house there, and then lift others up." I love that quote so much, because that notion of, you can do it. You can start your business. You can write your book. You can. And once you've gotten to that point, help someone else, and it sounds to me like that's exactly what you're doing,
Yes.
So,
oh my God. I'm doing a party dance over here in my chair. Like, I love that quote. Yes.
That's it. Once you've done it, pull others up. That's what we can do. We can help those coming after us. And so having said that, brass tacks here, Angela. If somebody says, I've got a book in me, or I've written a book or whatever, and they want to find you, what are the steps to getting involved with Collective Book Studios? What would you say someone should do when they want to do that, when they want to reach out, when they want to follow you, when they want to say, hey, could we work together?
Yeah. Well, this would be my advice in any publishing house, whether it be mine or you were a poet and it was edgy, and I would maybe recommend go looking at Soft Skull Press. Like, look at what we already do. Mm-hmm. That is really key. So read, like, what is lifestyle? What is children's? What are gift titles? We have a titles page. Who are we publishing? Follow our authors and follow us. I think that will give you a good sense. Like, do you think you're going to be a right fit for our list? I'm very into education. I'm very into parenting and to career development. I have a beautiful book coming out on labor and delivery. Of course, I am a mom of 3. But how we even package this labor book is very gifty. Like, my goal is bye bye baby here. Like, looking into really. So kind of look at our books and think about, are we the right fit? If you're writing a novel, like, that's not what we do, right? Mm-hmm. So it's necessarily not, I'm not going to be able to really help you there. But if in memoir, we also don't do. Now, I'm always willing to slide into my DMs, right, which is at the Collective Book Studio. And I'm happy to give ideas on a place for a memoir or for a novel if I can, because have been in the world for so long. So I have 20 years, and I might know a small independent press that you're not thinking about. And I think that, so for us, I love food and wine. I love diet and health. I love anything travel, full visual, children's. Think about how that book is going to be structured. And if it's not full visual, then it should really be in the self-help, career motivating, parenting space. But the business, it's not hardcore business. Does that make sense? That's not really my genre either. Mm-hmm, it really is. We're really a trade house. We're really trade publishing. We're not going to have a big academic reach. And some people may prefer to go to an academic press, for example, like UC Berkeley or something like that. So mm-hmm. I think it's really about knowing what your why is and what your purpose is and what you're trying to achieve with your own book, and then approach us. And I'm always, willing to take a look. There's no cost for an author for us to look at it. It's a submission process.
Right. Absolutely. And I thank you for that. A lot of people don't know that very specific and very good advice that you just gave. Look at the imprint, see what they're already doing, and see if you would be a fit there before you even pitch them, which I think is so important. And I have just a couple more questions, because honestly, Angela, I could keep you here for the next 6 hours and we could just keep chatting and order more coffee.
Well, I do want to know more about your NASA days. I'm like, wow, that's a story. Come on, aren't you going to write a children's book with me? And we do need more women in STEM for sure. Oh.
Well, and that's that's what I did. It was earth science, and my job was to go in and make dirt fun. That was what I did.
Oh, girl, oh my God. Well, we could talk for 6 hours, but really, obviously we need more women in STEM. So I applaud you there. And I know I'm going on I'm not a total tangent. You did bring it up, and I'm very curious about it, actually.
Well, we'll have to have a virtual cup of coffee sometime. No, the thing about NASA, and one of the things that what you do and what I do, where it intersects in some ways, is because I would go into places either teaching kids or teaching scientists how to speak to kids. A lot of it is they speak very eloquently, but they speak at very high levels. And 8-year-olds are going, you said what? Or they check out. And so my job was to help scientists learn how to speak to 8-year-olds in a way that the 8-year-olds would find fun. And so then I took that and I wrote a book all about it called Speak From Within. So see, now I've put it all back into the publishing realm about how we can communicate in a way that will be really, really effective, particularly if we don't know how or if we're nervous about it. So when we're talking about that stuff, when we're talking about NASA, or when we're talking about, writing for kids, what I'm talking about ultimately is communication. And so for you, with what you're trying to do, with what you're already doing successfully, it seems like, what are your goals 20, 30 years from now? What do you want to see in the publishing industry from Collective Book Studio and also perhaps the industry itself?
20, 30 years. Okay, so I'll be, what is that? Over 70 in 30
years. When you're on the beach and you're going, okay, I have done all of this really cool stuff. What are you thinking?
Yeah. Well, I want a New York Times. I want a New York Times bestseller.
Nice.
I want to see a time where independent publishing, women-owned pub presses are back on those bestseller lists. Like it's 89.9% big houses at this point. And the big houses just are getting huge, bigger. I mean, they're just all buying each other up. They're buying imprints. And I guess I believe in the power of like community and words. I think I need some of the more famous writers that might not need the huge advances and want to try something completely different. Like I'd almost like need them in partnership with me. But I think that's possible. I think that people can work with us in a way where you can get still a traditional deal and there's still some books that will make sense for your traditional house. I think I want to disrupt that industry idea that like, you have to stay all the time in traditional house. And if you don't, you're going to get like blacklisted, right? Like what? Or like I self-published and I can't now get a publishing deal. What? Like that doesn't make sense, people. Like let it go, because in the end, let it go, because the media, like if you have something to say and you're a nonfiction author, like you have something to say and you deserve to say it. Like, I don't think in 30 years someone's going to go, oh God, I had a self-published book and God, I could never get a tradition. Like, no, like stop all of that kind of competitive attitude. And instead, let's figure out how we're going to still maintain, right? This is really key. For me, the reason I am still very picky about the submissions is I have concerns with self-publishing for sure. There's things like blinders people have where you may put something that it could be offensive, racist, those types of things. And without a traditional guard really looking at, same with media, right? Like without traditional media really looking at it, there's room for hate speech. We saw that on Twitter all over, right?
Sure.
We saw that across the board and what that kind of insinuates in our culture and in our communities. So if traditional publishing, we need to change, we still need to be guarded for things like that. And that's why I think if I look 30 years ago, I'm on the beach, maybe with you, Isolde, and we are like having a great champagne. And we're still saying to the country, like, you can't have hate speech. You can't have depictions of people in a certain light, right? Like that's what the Dr. Seuss Enterprises did and shelved 6 books and Random House agreed with them. And like, there still needs to be that guard, but why also does that guard have to control all of distribution? I have no idea why, and all of people's IP. And so maybe I'm hoping, whether that be Simon Schuster, all my colleagues were like all laughing because we've kind of decided like, we're going to change that mindset, that access, that snobbery that sometimes does exist in my industry. And I think the reason I'm talking to you today, or the reason sometimes I'm on Clubhouse, is that I want people to understand that there's people internally inside my industry that are not so snobby, that don't want to say, oh, only the elite have access to publishing. That's not okay.
Once again, I love that you said that.
Well, it's true, right? Like, you don't have to be a celebrity to get, like, why are celebrities getting a cookbook and someone who's been a chef and got a culinary studio and is a writer for, even like top columnists in journals are not getting published? Like, that's not okay.
Well, and that's the thing, is that you, with your company, are offering the opportunity for people
Correct.
to do that. I mean,
Correct.
that to me is sort of the key takeaway for me here, is that that's where you're disrupting,
Correct.
that's where things are really changing, and more power to you. I think that's incredible. And again, I have like 45 more questions that maybe you'll come back and we'll do a part 2 of this interview, because I'm having such a wonderful time chatting with you. But I recognize you have a life to get back to. So I would love it if you wouldn't mind giving I put it in the show notes, but people learn differently. So if you wouldn't mind saying where people can find the Collective Book Studio, as far as on Instagram or on LinkedIn, wherever you are, and your website, so that I can also put it on the show notes, I would appreciate it very much.
Thank you. So our website is thecollectivebook.studio. Very easy. It's just thecollectivebook.studio. And then on LinkedIn, you can just reach out to me, Angela Engel. Our company's on LinkedIn as well as the Collective Book Studio. So both places, but feel free for people to DM me. I love LinkedIn. It's one of my favorite platforms. We also are active on Instagram at the Collective Book Studio. We don't have Twitter. There's only so many things we manage, but we're so visual that Instagram or LinkedIn as a personal, or our website, I would love people to subscribe to our newsletter. We have a newsletter that's growing that goes out twice a month, and it's really great. We have like this column called Read With Us, and we give all kinds of tips on what we're reading as a staff. And I don't believe that I have to only tote my books. I really talk about the industry. We have blogs that we write. So I just ask for people to build community with us and to engage with us. And that's part of the fun.
Absolutely. And I can say, as a subscriber to the newsletter, that it is a lot of fun, and I've gotten some great reading recommendations out of it. So thank you for that.
Good. Thank you.
So again, Angela, I'm super grateful to you for being here. Really, what a joy to talk with you. I have just one last question, and I ask it of everyone who comes on the show. And it's a silly question, but I find that the question often yields some pretty poignant answers. And the question is this: if you had an airplane that could skywrite anything for the whole world to see, what would you say?
Change starts with you.
Ah, your mantra. Yes. Yes, that's fabulous. Thank you so much, Angela. I appreciate it. It's a great, beautiful. I can see it in the sky already. Wonderful.
Me too. I've never been asked that question. And oh my God, if that actually happened, I would, over my house in Oakland, I would just be smiling. I am smiling ear to ear right now and looking out at my porch and my blue sky. I can imagine that.
No, I know, right? Thank you so much for that. This has been a fabulous chat with Angela Engel, who is the CEO of the Collective Book Studio. You are going to obviously need to follow her and the studio on Instagram and on LinkedIn. See what they're doing, see how they're disrupting the entire publishing industry. I am Isolde Trachtenberg for the Innovative Mindset Podcast. If you're liking what you're hearing, please rate and review the show. I'd love it. I'd love to hear from you. I love your comments, as you know. And if you're a writer, get in touch with me, because I'm always thrilled to talk to other authors. Until next time, this is Isolde Trachtenberg again, reminding you to listen, learn, laugh, and love a whole lot. Thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you being here. Please subscribe to the podcast if you're new. And if you like what you're hearing, please review it and rate it and let other people know. And if you'd like to be a sponsor of the show, I'd love to meet you on patreon.com/innovative mindset. I also have lots of exclusive goodies to share just with the show's supporters there. Today's episode was produced by Isolde Trachtenberg and is copyright 2021. As always, please remember this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Past performance does not guarantee future results, although we can always hope. Until next time, keep living in your innovative mindset.